Good morning friends and welcome back to NPTEL online certification course on Indian poetry in English. Dear friends, all of you might remember that in the previous lecture we discussed Sri Aurobindo and we had stopped on a particular note and had also decided that in the next lecture we shall be continuing with Aurobindo's Savitri. Before I go ahead, let me remind you of how Aurobindo had started writing his major poems, composing his major poems in the form of epilions. Now, you all might be thinking about what these epilions are. From the epilions, Aurobindo moved to the epic. Now, these epilions are also narratives which appear quite longer, but they are shorter than epics, and Savitri is an epic. So, when we had stopped the previous lecture, we had been talking about the division of Savitri, and you once again must remember that Savitri is divided into 12 books, 49 cantos, and of course, they are included or they have been composed in 3 parts. There is a presence of the poet's own voice through internal yoga, but then in this lecture we will find how this epic Savitri begins. My dear friends, as I told you earlier that this book Savitri is in 49 cantos and they are in 3 parts and the books are 12. Now, how does the first book begin? It is said that the first book or the beginning is actually in medias res. Medias res means any epic, when it begins, it does not begin from the beginning, rather it begins from the middle of the plot. And here also Savitri begins with the middle of the plot. Now, it has the very first book, it actually talks about, it does not talk about how Savitri, Satyavan met and whatsoever, but it actually talks about it is the scene of the night. Now, in every epic you will find that when it begins with a particular scene. So, this is the scene of the night, and then this night is a night when Savitri has got a sort of fear. What sort of fear? Because this book has been taken from the middle, and here the description is that of the dawn. Description is that of the dawn. My dear friends, Savitri knew that Satyavan will not live longer, and as the story goes that they could spend only 12 months together, both Savitri and Satyavan, they spent only 12 months together. But then since it has been taken from the middle and this beginning here, I mean this beginning here talks about the fear that is actually in the mind of Savitri, because she knows that the next day Satyavan will die. Now, see how it begins. It was the hour before the gods awake across the path of the divine event. The huge foreboding mind of night alone in her unlit temple of eternity lay stretched immobile upon silence's march. Almost one felt opaque, impenetrable in the somber symbol of her eyeless muse. Eyeless muse, she was not able to sleep. The abysm of the unbodied infinite, a fathomless zero occupied the world, yet only her outward self suffered and strove. No other person could know what was going on in the mind of Savitri, because Savitri was afraid of, and Savitri knew that the next day Satyavan is going to die. So, the epic begins with this. Even her humanity was half divine. Savitri was not a natural creature, my dear friends. Savitri was a sort of cosmic personality, and that is what Aurobindo wanted to show. But then she also had a human figure. Her spirit opened to the spirit in all. Her nature felt all nature as its own. Apart, living within, all life she bore. Aloof, she carried in herself the world. Her dread was one with the great cosmic dread, threat, fear, anxiety. Her dread was one with the great cosmic dread. Her strength was founded on the cosmic mights. The universal mother's love was hers. But Savitri had got some supernatural powers, and only a vague earth nature held the frame. But now she stirred. When you are not able to sleep properly, what do? You take turns, no? Sometimes left, sometimes right. So now she stirred, her life shared the cosmic load. At the summons of her body's voiceless call, her strong, far-winging spirit travelled back to the yoke of ignorance and fate, back to the labour and stress of mortal days, lighting a pathway through strange symbol dreams. And memory's casements opened on the hours, and the tired feet of thought approached her doors. See how symbolically the poet actually delineates it. And the tired feet of thought approached her doors. So, on her mind, she actually was having a sort of fear, and the fear was time and again, it was actually haunting her. Awake, she endured the moment's serried march, and when she gets up, awake, she endured the moment's serried march and looked on this green, smiling, dangerous world. Now, when we get up in the morning, we find everything to be so bright, beautiful, momentous, no? But then what about Savitri? Savitri is actually having a sort of fear, a sort of apprehension, and heard the ignorant cry of living things, life begins. But for Savitri, as a human being, life is going to come to an end, because she is going to lose the most loved thing on earth, her husband Satyavan. Amid the trivial sounds, the unchanging scene, her soul arose, confronting time and fate. Time and fate. What will happen? Though she knew that Satyavan is not going to live anymore. Immobile in herself, she gathered force. Because Savitri, when we come further, we will come to know how she had her own penance, and through her own penance, she had attained a spiritual power. She had attained a sort of divine force. This was the day when Satyavan must die. So, this is actually the opening scene here, but as I told you, this has actually been taken from the middle. The story goes like this. The first several books are actually devoted to Aswapati. Now, who is Aswapati? Aswapati is Savitri's father, and Aswapati, through his penance, through his tapasya, through his sadhana, no, and through his practice of yoga and tantra, he has actually he stands for a concentrated energy. Aswapati stands for concentrated energy. Fine. And then, so Aswapati, when he had attained that power, he once asked God, how can now I go back to that earth, and what should I do there? Fine. And then the Divine Mother will tell that on that earth you will find another divine creature appearing, and when we come across the lines, you will find, my dear friend. Now, and what happens? So, the mother says that when you go to that earth, you must not think that you are alone, that there will emerge a new force, and that divine power will appear on that earth. There came the gift of a revealing hour. Now, so one day when Aswapati was lost in his own sadhana, and then because he had already been informed that some new creature will appear there and that creature will have a cosmic look, fine. So, now Savitri comes, and how she comes? Look at the lines of the poem. There came the gift of a revealing hour, he saw through depths that reinterpret all. Now, Aswapati sees. Aswapati, who stands for concentrated energy, fine. A deathless meaning filled her mortal limbs. Now, here comes Savitri. A deathless meaning filled her mortal limbs. Even though she had a mortal hands, but then a deathless meaning, as in a golden waist poignant line, they seem to carry the rhythmic sob of bliss of earth's mute adoration towards heaven, released in beauty's cry of living form. Released in beauty's cry of living form. Savitri appeared here in a living form towards the perfection of eternal things. Transparent groan, the ephemeral living dress. She had an ephemeral, fine, living dress, the dress that other people also wear, bared the expressive deity to his view. And so, when Aswapati looks at Savitri, so he is confounded, he is actually surprised. But then what happens later on? Now, Savitri has come, and Savitri had been given a word. It is said that Savitri was to think of her own partner. She had to search her own partner, and now, but where could she find it? So, once upon a time, while she is passing through a forest, suddenly her eyes fell upon a young person, so beautiful, and this is none other than Satyavan. So, we can also see here how there is the first meet, and how Savitri comes to see the darling of her own soul. And when Satyavan also looks at Savitri, Satyavan is also infatuated, attracted, fascinated, and Satyavan says, thus Satyavan spoke first to Savitri, O thou who comest to me out of time's silences, O thou who comest to me out of time's silences, yet thy voice has wakened my heart to an unknown bliss. You have come here out of time's silences because nobody comes here. And the story goes well that Satyavan's father, Dyumatsena once upon a time was a king, but since he was deprived of his kingdom, he had to take shelter in a forest, and this is how they were living in the forest, and this is how Satyavan was there. So, when Satyavan for the first time sees Savitri, Satyavan says, O thou comest to me out of time's silences, yet thy voice has wakened my heart to an unknown bliss. Immortal or mortal, he is not able to decide whether this creature is mortal or immortal. Immortal or mortal, only in thy frame, for more than earth speaks to me from thy soul. So, from thy soul, I can understand more than earth can tell me, and more than earth surrounds me in thy gaze. In the gaze, the eyes, in your eyes, I can see more, I can find more meanings in it. How art thou named among the sons of men? So, this is the first meeting, the introduction. So, what are you called? So, by which adjective or by which name are you called? How art thou named among the sons of men? You can also find here in these lines the influences of influences of the romantics. Thou, art, thou, thy, like this, fine. Whence hast thou down filling my spirit's days, brighter than summer, brighter than my flowers, into the lonely borders of my life? O sunlight molded like a golden maid. Look at the comparison. O sunlight molded like a golden maid. Simile here, no? The use of simile here. I know that mighty gods are friends on earth. I know that mighty gods are friends of earth. Satyavan says that I know that even mighty gods are very friendly to the people of the earth, but you do not appear to be earthly. amid the pageantries of day and dusk, long have I travelled with my pilgrim soul, moved by the marvel of familiar things. So, this long have I travelled reminds us of Keats, who says, long have I travelled in the realms of God. So, here we can find the romantic ethos that she has taken from Keats, moved by the marvel of familiar things. So, this is how they meet for the first time. And when they meet for the first time, my dear friends, what happens, you know? When Savitri has met the person who would be her own lover, she is actually filled with joy. She bubbles with delight and wants to go and tell Aswapati that I have found the mate of my soul. But my dear friend, do you know what will happen? There is somebody sitting there, and that person is Narada. Narada knows everything about, and Narada will object that how can this earthly creature find? How? Because Narada knew what Savitri was, and Narada also knew that Satyavan was not going to live for more than a year. Now, when they meet for the first time, and how they meet after the introduction, now Savitri, she bowed and touched his feet with worshipping hands, because Satyavan was not able to believe that she is an earthly creature. So, what she did? She bowed and touched his feet with worshipping hands. She made her life his world for him to trade, and made her body for the room for his delight, her beating heart a remembrance of bliss. He gathered all Savitri into his clasp. Around her his embrace became the sign of a locked closeness through slow intimate years. So, this is how they met physically. No, this is how they met physically. So, here again a sort of romantic touch that we can find, but this meeting of earth with heaven, the meeting or the union of heaven and the earth, we can call it, my dear friends. But in a wide moment of two souls that meet, she felt her being flow into him as in waves. You will come across several such comparisons, my dear friend. A river pours into a mighty sea. Her consciousness was a wave of him alone, and all her separate self was lost in him. Her happy voice cried out to Satyavan, my heart will stay here on this forest verge, whatever I be. But I have actually been captivated and I want to stay here. I am actually bound to be here, and my heart wants to stay here only in this forest, which is actually isolated, because Satyavan had said, how come you come to this earth? But my dear friend, as it was fated that their union will be very temporary, and you know Narada knew it all. So, when Savitri goes there, Narada actually expresses his own apprehension, and Narada says this cannot happen, because this man, I mean the choice is not good. And at this, even Aswapati also tried to convince the daughter, but Aswapati failed. And then Savitri's mother also tried to persuade Savitri, but all this persuasion could not have an effect. Savitri actually tried to convince, and by convincing, you see what her reasons are, because Savitri knew that she had some other power also apart from the power that all earthly creatures can have. And you see what she replies when Narada and Aswapati and Aswapati's wife, they actually object. So, Savitri now says, once my heart chose and chooses not again. So, once I have decided, I am not going to swerve from my decision. The word I have spoken can never be erased. You say that he is going to die very soon, but the word I have spoken, the words that I have exchanged can never be erased. It is written in the record book of God. The truth once uttered from the earth's air effaced, by mind forgotten sounds immortally, forever in the memory of time, once the dice fall thrown by the hand of fate, in an eternal moment of the gods, My heart has sealed its troth to Satyavan. So, I have already submitted, I have already surrendered my heart to Satyavan. Its signature adverse fate, even fate cannot efface, and it cannot, even fate cannot change it now. So, at this waywardness, what Narad could do? And Narad finally said, no, let her help herself, fine. And you know, finally, Savitri, at Savitri's insistence, my dear friend, they are married. Savitri and Satyavan are married. But remember one thing, Savitri knew that after 12 months, Satyavan will die. But then through her own power, through her own sadhana, Savitri will try to win back the soul of Satyavan through her divine force. Because Savitri stands for truth. Savitri stands for truth. And Savitri stands for love. And Satyavan also stood for the truth of the soul. And Aswapati was an energy that was full of concentration. And Savitri continues, those who shall part, who have grown, one being within, death's grip can break our bodies but not our souls. Let me underline this line, death's grip can break our bodies but not our souls. So, we are united by souls, not by bodies. If death take him, I too know how to die. Let fate do with me what she will or can. I am stronger than death and greater than my fate. My love shall outlast the world. Doom falls from me, helpless again my immortality. Fate's law may change, but not my spirit's will. Fate's law may change, but not my spirit's will. So, this is what Savitri decides, and she has decided that she will marry. And now we can again come back to the beginning, where now after having spent 12 months, Savitri is in a state of fear. But what should Savitri do when the death of God will take away Satyavan? What should Savitri do? So, she actually moves inwards and undertakes several journeys. She meets mother of sorrow, she meets mother of might, she meets mother of joys, and then through all these meetings, she actually gains immense power, she actually gains immense energy, she actually becomes a cosmic thing. And you know, and that is why when she says, fate's law may change, but not my spirit's will. And finally, because Savitri knew, so and when we had begun on a note that Savitri stirred and she was not able to enjoy the cry of other living beings. So, she decides, well, she will go to the forest, because when she goes to the forest, and Satyavan will die, my dear friends. So, when Satyavan was nearing death, Satyavan cried, Savitri, Savitri, oh Savitri, lean down my soul and kiss me while I die. Before I die, please kiss me. And even as her pallid lips pressed his failed, losing last sweetness of response. His cheek pressed down her golden arm. She sought his mouth, still with her living mouth, as if she could persuade his soul back with her kiss. But all her attempts, she knew well, will go futile. She will not be able to bring back the soul of Satyavan so soon. But then she knows well that she has that power and she will be able to do that. Let Savitri face the death god, the Yama. And when Yama appears, Savitri actually decides that she will encounter Yama and she will have a sort of debate. And so, she goes there and with Satyavan's soul, she actually follows death God, and then death actually has several questions. Savitri actually requests death to spare Satyavan's soul, but death has its own, as is the tradition, my dear friend. If the body dies, the body dies and the body cannot be returned. The soul actually visits a new sphere, the soul actually visits a new reason, and then Savitri questions death. Eternal truths lives not with mortal men. If you might be thinking, because death has already said that this is actually the rule, that when people die, they have to leave this earth. So Savitri raises the queries and she says, eternal truth lives not with mortal men, or if she dwells within thy mortal heart, show me the body of the living truth. So now death questions that if you can show me, because you say that you want to get it back, and then there is a tradition, there is a custom, show me the body of the living truth. If you know that Satyavan's soul is true, because there is an encounter between death and Savitri, or draw for me the outline of her face, that I too may obey and worship her. If you stand for all that, let me see. Then I will give thee back thy Satyavan, but here are only facts and steel bound law. This truth that Satyavan is dead. Satyavan is dead. Why are you hankering after somebody who is dead? No magic truth can bring the dead to life. But is Savitri going to be cowed down? Is Savitri going to be placated? No. Savitri knows well her own powers, and question after question that death puts to Savitri, and the questions are also valid, because it is actually a tradition, it is a custom that when people die, their souls, their bodies die, but the soul is alive. But here once again death puts a dilemmatic question, because Savitri says that Satyavan stands for truth. Child, hast thou trodden the gods beneath thy feet? Have you trampled God beneath your feet, only to win poor shreds of earthly life? For him thou lovest, cancelling the grand release. And then towards the end, what death says? Are thy arms sweeter than the courts of God? My dear friends, here the question is not between arms and the man, but the question is between arms and the arms. The arms are that of Savitri and the other arms are of the death. So death says, are your arms sweeter even in the courts of God? Are you even more powerful than God, that you really want to bring back Satyavan? Creation and destruction, it is actually a continuing process. And but then when we say creation, by creation we mean a progression, some growth. And Savitri says, O death, thou lookest on an unfinished world. You only have seen an unfinished world, assailed by thee and off its road unsure, peopled by imperfect minds and ignorant lives, and sayest God is not and all is vain. How shall the child already be the man? If you say that my arms are not sweeter than the courts of God, now what you are trying to tell me, that God is not and all is in vain? I mean, a child that has come to the earth, should he not become the man? Because creation is a continuous process. How shall the child already be the man? Because he is infant, shall he never grow? Shall he never grow? If the child is infant, should the child not grow? Because he is ignorant, shall he never learn? So here there is reference to man. So long as man is ignorant, but man has to grow. Man has to grow from the earth to the divine creature, and that is possible when you are talking about the truth. That is possible. Man can grow. In a small fragile seed, a great tree lurks. So, it is only a seed and that can be developed into a tree. In a tiny gene, a thinking being is set, a little element in a little sperm. It grows and is a conqueror and assays. In God concealed the world began to be, tardily it travels towards manifest God. The infinite holds the finite in its arm. Look at the lines. The infinite holds the finite in its arm. You are talking about the finite, but the infinite holds the finite in its arm. Time travels towards revealed eternity, and time will travel, dear death. And you know, so when all these are being said, Savitri finally, because the questions continue and Savitri also continues to answer, and she answered because she had already said, can you trod all gods? So she says, straight I trample on the road. The strong hand hewed for me which planned our paths. I run where his sweet dreadful voice commands. Perhaps you do not know who I am. I run where his sweet dreadful voice commands, and I am driven by the reins of God. You do not know? I am driven by the reins of God. Why drew he wide his scheme of mighty worlds, or filled infinity with his passionate breath? So, and as Savitri's answers continue, death also responds, but finally when we go towards the end, we will find that death is defeated before the LBs of Savitri. Or wherefore did he build my mortal form? So, from where did he build my mortal frame or my form, and sow in me his bright and proud desires, if not to achieve? Because she has already said that creation. So, in response to that, if not to achieve, to flower in me, to love. Every infant that comes to this earth blooms, flowers. In me to love, carving his human image richly shaped in thoughts and largenesses and golden powers, for heaven can wait our coming in its calm. Easy the heavens were to build for gods. It was quite easy for God to build heavens, but about earth, how much do you know about earth? Earth was his difficult matter. Earth, the glory, gave of the problem and the race and strife. There are the ominous masks, the terrible powers. There it is greatness to create the gods. Gods can be created even by an earthly figure, earthly frame. Is not the spirit immortal and absolved? So, the spirit is immortal and absolved, always delivered from the grasp of time. So, any body, any terrestrial thing that attains the status of a spirit, earlier it might have been earthly. Why came it down into the mortal space? Why came it down into the mortal space? Why to the human accompaniment? A charge he gave to his high spirit in man. So, a spirit is all powerful and wrote a hidden decree on nature's tops. Freedom is this with ever seated soul, large in life's limits, strong in matter's knots, building great stuff of action from the worlds, to make fine wisdom from coarse scattered strands, and love and beauty out of war and night, the wager wonderful and the game divine. And finally she will tell, this is my answer to thee, O death. What liberty has the soul which feels not free? I mean, if you simply say that the soul is revealed, so where is the liberty of the soul? Does the soul not have freedom? What liberty has the soul which feels not free? If the soul is always confined and if the soul is not free, what liberty does it have? unless stripped bare and cannot kiss the bonds. If it cannot kiss the bonds, the human bonds, no, the union between two people, two bodies, two souls, the lover winds around his playmate's limbs, choosing his tyranny crushed in his embrace. To seize him better with her boundless heart, she accepts the limiting circle of his arms, bows full of bliss beneath his mastering hands, and laughs in his rich constraints, most bound, most free. This is my answer to thy lures. You are actually trying to tempt me by your questions, but this is my answer to thee, O death. What liberty has the soul which feels not free? The soul also should have liberty. And later on you will find that after listening to all these alibis, after listening to all these logical, philosophical and all these debatable things, all these reasons that Savitri gives, finally death is defeated. Death does not have any answer to all the queries of Savitri, and there comes a time when death finally feels death is defeated. The two opposed each other face to face. Who are these two? Death and Savitri. His being like a huge fort of darkness towered, around it her light grew, an ocean seas, while the shade survived defying heaven, assailing in front, oppressing from above, light like a burning tongue licked up his thoughts. Now see the beauty. There may be at times you will find repetitions, and these repetitions, these are actually, I have been talking about the darshana, and finally this light, this new light, before this new light, death is also defeated. Light like a burning tongue licked up his thoughts. Light was a luminous torture in his heart. Light coursed a splendid agony through his nerves. His darkness muttered, perishing in her blaze. He called to night. So finally death called to night, but she felt shuddering back. So night, which stands for darkness, night which stands for ignorance. So night also felt shuddering back. He called to hell. Now the death god Yama called to hell, but sullenly it replied. Sadly it also retired. He turned to the inconsigned for support from which he was born, his vast sustaining self. It drew him back towards boundless vacancy. His body was eaten by light, the light that was there, the light before Savitri. His body was eaten by light, his spirit devoured. At last he knew, defeat inevitable. So defeat was mandatory, and defeat came and left crumbling on the shape that he had worn, because Yama, or the death god, he had a different form, and Aurobindo says, and left crumbling the shape that he had worn, abandoning hope to make man's soul his prey, because there was a fight between man's soul and then the Yama, and so it is found that now there was no need, now it was rather futile to make man's soul his prey. Body can die, but the soul cannot, and forced to be mortal, the immortal spirit, and afar he fled, shunning her dreaded touch, and refuge took in the retreating night, in the dream twilight of that symbol world. Again, remember what it has been titled, Savitri, a legend and a symbol. Fine. So the dire universal shadow disappeared, vanishing into the void from which it came, as if deprived of its original cause. The twilight realm passed, fading from their souls, and Satyavan and Savitri were alone. So finally, before Savitri's deliberations and Savitri's reply and Savitri's reasonings, Yama, or the death god, could not sustain, and he was defeated. He was not able to make man's soul his prey, and that is what Aurobindo says, because when he was writing that, Savitri was planned to be written only in 2 parts, fine, but later on it was developed, and Aurobindo had said that there will come a time when the mind will be invaded by or superseded by the superminds. So, before Savitri's supermind, death could not sustain and death had to die, fine. Now, but when this was not the end, even when death finally was defeated, then there were other offers also to Savitri, because Savitri has had become a divine thing, a thing which had a cosmic tinge, and they offered some other, other temptations too, but Savitri always wanted to be with Satyavan, and Savitri stood firm. In vain thou tempest with solitary bliss, because Savitri had been offered solitary bliss, and Savitri should not go to the earth, should not become earthly creature or whatsoever, but then there are several temptations which Savitri says, in vain thou tempest with solitary bliss, 2 spirits saved out of a suffering world. We are the 2 spirits who have been saved out of this suffering world, my soul and his indissolubly linked in the one task for which our lives were born. Our lives were born for one task, to raise the world to God in deathless light. What was the aim? To raise the world to God in deathless light, to bring God down to the world on earth we came. To change the earthly life to divine, which also Aurobindo wanted, that this human creature, this human frame, this human experience can be transformed into a new experience, into a sort of a spiritual experience, to change the earthly life to life divine. Since God has made earth, earth must make in her God. See the purity of vision. What hides within her breast she must reveal. I claim thee for the world that thou hast made. If man lives bound by his humanity, if he is tied forever to pain, let a greater being then arise from man. Man is not always to be confined only to pain and to flames. Rather, if man has come to this earth and he is bound by his humanity, if he is tied forever to his pain, let a greater being then arise, the superhuman with the eternal mate, and the immortal sins through earthly forms, elsewhere creation vain, and this great world a nothing that is in time's moment seems to be. So, if it does not happen, then what will happen? Else creation vain, otherwise this creation will be in vain, it will be futile. So, if man has been sent to this earth, let man also have the power to make this earth divine, to make this earth a pleasant place, and that can be done. That is why finally she is rewarded, and then these lines, descend to life with him thy heart desires, O Satyavan, O luminous Savitri. These are the blessings. I sent you forth of old beneath the stars, a dual power of God in an ignorant world, in a hazed creation set from limitless self, bringing down God to the insentient globe, and as it goes, and finally, and hearts grow enamored of divine delight, and human wills tuned to the divine will. I can go on and on, my dear friends, because the lines are so beautiful and so inspiring, but we have some way or the other to understand that this divine force shall flow through tissue and cell and take the charge of breath and speech and act. Aurobindo also wanted to make man conscious, make man even more conscious, to take the charge of breath and speech and act. Fine? All through our lives, we speak lies in order to get an easy access to several things of power, of joy, of knowledge. But then there is another purpose also in this life, and that is, and meet the deity in common things. Are we really able to see the deity or the divine in common things? Nature shall leave to manifest secret God. The spirit shall take up the human play. This earthly life can also become the life divine, and that is what Aurobindo's purpose was there. And when Savitri could bring Satyavan back, now who actually was in a great puzzle or wonder? It was Dyumatsena. Dyumatsena was Satyavan's father, and when he could see that Satyavan came back, and he asked Satyavan, how could this happen? And finally you see Satyavan says, this is not because of me, but this is only because of her. And then what she says, in a way also she says that the entire power, the entire Shakti lies not only with man, but also with another power, that is the divine mother, that is Shakti, my dear friend, and that Shakti is in a woman, and Savitri has come in the form of a woman, and Savitri can do that, and she has been able to do that. Lay all on her, she is the cause of all, with her enchantment she has twined me round. Behold, at noon leaving this house of clay, I wandered in far off eternities, yet still a captive in her golden hands. I trade your little hillock called green earth, and in the moments of your transient sun, leave glad among the busy works of men, because it is only because of Savitri that I have been able to get back, I have been able to be mortal once again. Finally, when we have seen the entire drama that is being played through all these 12 books, 49 cantos and 3 parts, what should we conclude? Can Savitri be concluded? Many people have gone to the extent of saying that Savitri is actually the quintessence of the life divine. Savitri is the quintessence of paradise lost and paradise regained. Savitri may be longer, but the message that Savitri leaves before us is for all times to be carried. So, my dear friends, when we have a look at the entire corpus of Aurobindo's writings, which has witnessed a transformation from the romantic sweeps of imagination to the supernatural and the spiritual power and the force of reality, then we find Aurobindo's poetry is only an attempt at building the nation's consciousness through speech, through act, through good faith. Faith of man can enable the unity of his being with full existence. Man, even though he is an earthly creature, he is a transitional being, and he has the capacity to gain perfection through inner growth, through integral yoga, through sadhana. The discovery of self, my dear friend, according to Aurobindo, can lead to the discovery of the world. Matter and spirit, because there is a fight between. Since Aswapati stands for the concentrated energy, Aswapati stands for an energy that can challenge anything, and then Savitri, which stands for truth, and Satyavan, which stands for truth, which is actually now involved and which has been victimized in the sufferings. So, man can attain divine qualities through his consciousness. So, what is at the core of it? At the core of it, it is actually the consciousness that has a driving force for man to bring the divine on the earth. Aurobindo's Savitri can be considered to offer a glorious future. It is not a dull recital of a dead past. There have been some criticism also that Savitri is very repetitive, Savitri is very long. How can the Western readers understand Savitri? My dear friends, Aurobindo's aim was also to disseminate the power of the East to the West, and that has also been done earlier by Tagore. So, finally, let us say, and let us try to take a note of what Srinivas Iyengar, one of the proponents of Indian English literature, says about Savitri. It is neither an overflow of tradition nor an eruption of modernism, but a recordation in poetic terms of the ends and means, determining man's and earth's ultimate destiny, set in the background of cosmic line. So, there can be n number of conclusions, but what makes Savitri beautiful and all times great is it has got layers of meaning, it has got layers of wisdom, it is written in a fashion that once you start reading you are spellbound and you will not leave the book before you have completed, my dear friend. But today's lecture has to come to an end by saying that man has in him the power to bring the divine to the earth, my dear friend, and we can really do that. Let us try to do that through our act, through our mind, through our supermind, manasa, bacha, karmana. I mean, the interpretations might be different, but before I come to wind up this lecture, let me once again quote from the same Savitri, where it is said, love must not cease to live upon the earth, because it is only in the love that everything else is possible. For love is the bright link betwixt earth and heaven. Love is man's lien on the absolute. And I think with this love, our lectures will also continue to have its flow, to make us transform and to make us realize the power, the might, the glory, and also the beauty of Indian poetry in English. With this, we come to the first phase of Indian poetry in English. We have already completed the major voices whom we can call the path breakers, and next time when we meet, we will start a new phase, that is how Indian English poetry, after having being felt that it was confined only to traditions, now how it can come from the traditions and how it can also adopt a sort of modernity, and it can also make its strength and presence felt to the outside world, to the audiences all over the world. With this, let me thank you for your patience for listening to this lecture. Thank you very much. I wish you all a good day ahead.